Lessons from the book Sprint, which was written by partners at Google Ventures. I myself worked for a Google Ventures-backed startup in Silicon Valley called Rocket Lawyer. This is based on proven methods from over 100 sprints. As you pursue these sprints, make sure you go after your most important problems. There's an attraction to go after the low-hanging fruit or the easy wins, but really you want to focus on where you can have the biggest impact, and that's with the biggest problems. You also want to prioritize the area where your product meets customers. So that interface is very important because there's a lot of visibility there. There's a lot of revenue opportunity there. It's often where you can have the biggest impact. You also want to focus on big, bold bets instead of small, incremental optimizations, and allow long, uninterrupted blocks of time, which are particularly important for developers. You want to formulate a sprint team, and this is 7 or fewer people. You can have a decider. This could be the CEO, product manager, head of design, for example, and make sure that whoever is the decider is able to delegate to someone else if that person is absent. You have a finance expert, a marketing expert, customer expert, tech/logistics expert, and a design expert. One of the central arguments in this book is that your sprint should be 5 days. Shorter is exhausting and doesn't allow enough time to create a prototype. Longer sprints don't accomplish more, so there are diminishing returns there. But a 5-day sprint is ideal because it creates urgency, cuts out unnecessary debate, and allows enough time for the creation of a prototype. Here's what your schedule could look like with a 5-day sprint. Monday, define the challenge and choose a target. Tuesday, come up with solutions. Wednesday, decide on a solution and develop a step-by-step plan for your prototype. That plan is going to look like a storyboard. So for example, the user clicks a link, they watch an animated explainer video, and then they have a conversation with chatbots. Thursday is when you actually create the prototype, and you're able to do this in less than 7 hours. Later, I'll explain that one of the reasons for this is that prototypes are 90% of the time just presentations. And Friday, interview customers and watch them use the prototype. The magic in sprints happen when you use 2 big whiteboards to solve problems. You want to sort your problems before you work on solutions. If you start with solutions first, you often think about the technology and the tactics rather than necessarily thinking about the most efficient way to solve the problem. Another key perceptual change is to start at the end of the sprint. So imagine the end. What would be answered at that point? What questions do you want to answer? What would have to be true to reach your long-term goal? So for example, I want to make $5 million. What do I need to do to get there? What do I need to do to increase the user experience and reduce the amount of time to have a problem solved? Imagine you failed. What might have caused that? So an example here, let's say you set the goal as more patients enrolled in trials. Then you're going to have a series of sprint questions such as these 2. Can we find matches fast enough? Will clinics change their workflows? And I'll show how to do this visually next. So what we want to do is draw a map of the processes that are happening with our product. So list the actors on the left, in this case, patient, doctor, coordinator. Write the ending on the right, beginning therapy, so that's the outcome that we want. And then we add words and arrows in between. So the patient makes an appointment to discuss trial, enroll, and then begin the therapy. The doctor and the coordinator search for matching trials, and then those people are enrolled. That is your map. We want to get input from experts on key topics, and those key topics are strategy, voice of customer, how things work, and previous efforts. So previous efforts is other attempts earlier in the company when they tried to solve this problem or related problems, and what worked, what didn't. There's some historical knowledge there that should be extracted. So next we take this map and we write what we call how might we notes. And there's a psychological benefit here of sort of seeing where the opportunities lie. Instead of just listing problems, we phrase things in this way. How might we use imagery to tell our story? How might we recreate search on the web? How might we help people realize they can buy coffee online? And then what we do is we take these notes and we stick them on the map. So I put an example here. how might we review EHR faster, and we stick it here in the process. And then last, what you do is you vote on the notes to figure out, okay, what are the key how might we opportunities? As we explore these sprints, we need to understand that great innovation is built on existing ideas. I think there's a tendency in product management and in business and entrepreneurship to come up with, something that's brand new, that's totally unique, that is groundbreaking and disruptive. But often the most successful things are just improvements or iterations on what are already out there. And if we look at the leading products in the world, often that's what they were. They weren't the first, they were just the best, or the one that went the broadest and became the most famous because it fixed perhaps some critical problems, or perhaps the timing was just right. Look to similar problems in different environments, so that can be a great place of inspiration to get out of groupthink. Just look at other industries, for example. Do a sketch of your solution without trying to be perfect. And recruit people to use your prototype. And you can do that with Craigslist, or you can go to specific associations if you have niche target market. You can offer $100 to test your prototype. If you're going after executives, you probably want to go higher. So for example, with this $200 Visa gift card. I personally often just use PayPal payments, direct cash instead of messing around with Amazon gift cards, Starbucks gift cards, but those work as well. Okay, now with prototypes, this is really interesting because I think people think, they need to spend a lot of time programming a prototype or building something with 3D printing, and those can work, but really what you're trying to do is just create a facade, not the real thing, and that can be done in less than 7 hours. And a presentation deck with Keynote or Canva or PowerPoint can create the illusion, for example, of real software or a real experience in a magazine or whatever industry you're in. You can replicate an experience with something built with a presentation. Perhaps it's designed to look like a video or an interactive slide deck. So for example, let's say you're an automated personal trainer. Well, you could create that simulated experience using a presentation. And the authors argue that 90% of prototypes can be created with a presentation. So let's think of an example of a prototype. Slack. The concept of using Slack in the office is difficult for office people to imagine. So what the CEO decided was he wanted to create the idea of a bot team simulation. But programming a series of bots would take a lot of time. And within only 7 hours, you can't really do that. So what they did with the prototype is they just got the members of the sprint to act as though they were the robots. So they would respond in a robotic manner to people's questions in the prototyping stage. So you can see that you can just hack something together because the idea is to get the insights, not to get perfection. Make sure that your prototype itself can be tested in 15 minutes. 3D printing can help if you're dealing with hardware. And when you're doing customer interviews, there's a certain process you want to use. But before you do that, you need to understand that 85% of the problems can be observed from interviewing just 5 people. So you don't need to interview 30 people, hundreds of people, for example. So here's a general process you would follow. You start with a friendly welcome. You ask general open-ended context questions. So you want to get people in the mindset of being able to answer your questions, because if you just go straight into the details, they haven't contextualized, and it's going to be very hard for them to answer. And then what you do is you intro the prototype. Then you start asking detailed tasks to get a reaction from customers using the prototype. And then you do a quick debrief to get overall thoughts and impressions. So some general guidelines here: start with small talk to warm people up so they're less nervous. Then get gradually more detailed into topic-specific questions. So for example, what kind of work do you do? What do you do to take care of yourself? So this is a segue from small talk into the area of fitness. For example, if you're trying to prototype something to do with automated fitness training. Don't ask multiple choice or yes or no questions, because typically when we're doing interviews or we're doing prototyping, what we're looking for are insights, not kind of binary quantitative questions. We want to go deeper. Ask why, what, where, when, why, and how instead of yes or no. And lastly, a trick you can use to get insights is to ask broken questions. So, for example, just say, so what is, and then kind of trail off, because that silence or that trailing is going to extract insights from the customer without you planting ideas, preconceived ideas into their heads.